Amara Bell's story is a powerful reminder that justice doesn't just happen, it's fought for, built and reclaimed. Her journey from victim to victor is proof that when we stand up against injustice, no matter how overwhelming it seems, we can change the course of history. But this story doesn't end here. The real work begins when we share these truths, spread awareness, and fight for justice in our own communities. If this story moved you, make sure to like this video to show your support. Share it with someone who needs to hear that true justice is possible and that it's worth fighting for. And don't forget to subscribe to stay updated on more powerful real-life stories that inspire, challenge, and ignite change. It was a quiet Thursday evening in Graysonville, a small town tucked deep in the South, where things usually stayed quiet, and trouble had a way of disappearing before it made the papers. Amara Bell, 29, had just finished a guest lecture at the local community center. She was known around town, especially in the Black community, as a rising star, a Harvard law graduate who had come back to her roots to fight for justice, where it mattered most. That night, she was driving her late grandmother's old Buick, heading home, listening to a podcast about systemic reform. Then the red and blue lights flashed behind her. She pulled over calmly, placing her hands on the wheel. She had done this dance before. Black folks like her were taught early, stay still, be polite, and pray they don't escalate. Officer Ray Dobbins approached her window, flashlight up, hand already near his holster. He didn't introduce himself. Instead, his first words were, "You know why I stopped you?" Amara shook her head. "No, officer, I wasn't speeding, and all my lights are working. Is there a problem?" Dobbins narrowed his eyes. "You're a little jumpy, acting suspicious. Step out of the car." Confused but composed, Amara replied, "I'm not jumpy, sir. I'm just trying to understand the reason for the stop. Could I speak to your supervisor?" That was all it took. Ray yanked the door open. "Step out, now, or I'll drag you out myself." What followed was caught on his body cam, though he would later lie and say the footage was incomplete. Amara stepped out, hands still raised, repeating calmly, "I'm not resisting," yet Ray shoved her onto the hood, cuffed her tightly and called in for backup as if he'd caught a dangerous fugitive. His report would claim she was belligerent, possibly under the influence, and had reached for something under the seat. No drugs were found, no weapon, just a copy of the new Jim Crow and a half-finished bottle of water. She was booked into county jail, her belongings confiscated, her phone locked away. When she asked again to speak to a lawyer, she was told to shut up, that she was lucky she wasn't being charged with assault. Back at the station, Officer Dobbins laughed with another deputy. "You see the look on her face, thought she was better than us." Not anymore, but Amara wasn't just any woman, and what Dobbins saw as weakness was actually resolve building. Minute by minute, she spent 2 days behind bars, no calls, no bond, and no idea what was coming next. What happened in court, however, would make national headlines, and it would change the town of Graysonville forever. But for now, all anyone knew was that a respected Black woman was taken down for nothing more than asking the wrong man the right question. And the system, or so it seemed, was ready to bury her. The courtroom was cold, but the air felt heavier that morning, as if everyone inside sensed something wasn't right. Amara Bell was brought in through a side door, shackled at the ankles and wrists, still wearing the same jeans and sweater from the night of her arrest. Her clothes were rumpled, stained, and she looked exhausted, not broken, but bruised by the system already. Whispers filled the room. Some recognized her, others were just curious why a well-known activist had been arrested at all. But before anyone could ask questions, Officer Ray Dobbins stood up, all confidence and swagger. He cleared his throat and addressed the judge. "Your Honor, the defendant has been uncooperative since her arrest. She's agitated, combative, and poses a possible threat to jail staff and herself." It was a lie, every word. Judge Harold Kinney, a man who'd been on the bench for nearly 30 years, and hunted with Dobbins every fall, didn't ask for clarification. He didn't look at the body cam footage, or hear from Amara's public defender, who was barely paying attention. Instead, Judge Kinney nodded slowly and said, "Given the officer's statement, the court authorizes precautionary measures to ensure safety during pre-trial holding." Then he said the words that shocked even the bailiffs. "Remove the defendant's hair. Head must be shaved under sanitation protocol. Immediate compliance." Amara looked up sharply, "Excuse me, what does my hair have to do with safety?" No one answered her. 2 deputies stepped forward. She shook her head in disbelief. "This is illegal. This is dehumanizing." Her voice trembled but didn't break. "I haven't been convicted of anything." Still, the judge banged the gavel and said, "Proceed." In a back room, they strapped her to a chair. A buzzing sound filled the air. With every stroke of the clippers, pieces of her identity, her pride, her expression, fell to the floor. Amira closed her eyes, not to cry, but to survive the moment. They didn't just cut her hair, they tried to erase. A courthouse intern filmed it from behind a cracked door, and anonymously posted it online. Within hours the clip went viral. The hashtag, "Shaved for Justice," spread like wildfire. News outlets from Atlanta to New York demanded answers. Civil rights groups held protests outside the courthouse. Lawyers across the country offered to represent Amira for free, but in Graysonville, Officer Dobbins smirked as he watched the news at a local bar. "She got what she deserved," he told a reporter who happened to be there. "It's procedure." He had no idea what was already in motion behind the scenes, because what he didn't know, what no one knew yet, was that Amira wasn't just going to fight back. She was going to flip the entire system that tried to humiliate her. And the next time they saw her in a courtroom, she wouldn't be in chains. She'd be in charge. 6 months had passed since that dark day in the courtroom. While Amira Bell tried to reclaim her peace, the world refused to forget what had been done to her. Protests had shaken Graysonville's streets for weeks. Petitions called for resignations, and when national civil rights attorneys stepped in, the case against Amira quietly disappeared. No apologies, no explanation, just a dry court order saying, "Charges dismissed." But Amira wasn't looking for mercy, she wanted justice. With the help of a powerful legal team, she filed a federal lawsuit against Officer Ray Dobbins, the Graysonville Police Department, and Judge Harold Kinney. The evidence was clear: body cam footage, eyewitnesses, even the now infamous video of the courtroom head shaving. The town tried to settle out of court. They didn't want a trial. They paid her $3.4 million in damages. But for Amira, the money wasn't the point. While Graysonville reeled from the scandal, the old systems began to crumble. Under pressure from voters and state officials, Judge Kinney announced his sudden retirement, citing health reasons. Several corrupt officers resigned quietly, their names absent from press releases. Then the biggest change of all, the State Bar Association fast-tracked Amira's judicial review, and in a historic appointment, one that made national news, Amira Bell was sworn in as the new judge of Graysonville Municipal Court. The very courthouse that tried to break her was now hers to run. On her first day, the courtroom was packed, every seat taken. Reporters lined the back wall. Young black girls sat in the front row with wide eyes, watching a woman who looked like them take the bench with pride. Amira walked in slowly, robed in deep navy with gold trim. Her natural curls framed her face, full, free, and unapologetic. She took her seat behind the bench. The courtroom clerk called the first case, State versus Ray Dobbins. Charges: abuse of authority, filing false reports, obstruction of justice, and violation of civil rights. A hush fell over the room. All eyes turned to the defendant's table. There he stood, Officer Dobbins, no longer in uniform, now wearing a cheap suit and a frozen stare. His skin, once flushed with confidence, was pale with disbelief. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Amira looked down from the bench, her voice calm, steady. "Mr. Dobbins, you have the right to a fair trial. The court expects full respect for this process." He swallowed hard. His lawyer tried to whisper something, but Dobbins wasn't listening. He was still trying to process what everyone else already knew. The power he once abused had turned. The woman he tried to silence now held the gavel. In the law, in that moment, he realized what true justice looked like. It didn't yell, it didn't humiliate, it waited, and then it delivered. The courtroom buzzed with quiet tension as Judge Amira Bell entered, her robe flowing with authority, her expression composed but unreadable. She sat behind the bench and tapped the gavel once. Court is now in session. Every seat in the room was filled. The town had shown up. Journalists scribbled notes. Cameras weren't allowed, but word of this trial would spread far beyond Graysonville. Ray Dobbins sat stiffly at the defense table, eyes darting, hands clenched. His lawyer, a sharp but nervous man from out of town, had already filed 3 motions to dismiss the case. Amira denied each professionally, respectfully, and by the book. This trial will proceed fairly, she reminded them. Let the facts speak. And the facts spoke loudly. The prosecution opened with body cam footage from Amira's arrest. The room watched in silence as Dobbins yanked open her car door, forced her onto the hood, and called in backup, all while she remained calm and compliant. Then came the testimonies. One by one, people stepped forward. A Latina store owner described how Dobbins had harassed her teenage son, accusing him of stealing a soda he paid for. A retired police sergeant, once Dobbins' colleague, revealed he'd filed internal complaints years ago, but was ignored. They told me to stop causing waves, he said, staring at the jury, so I quit. Then came Dobbins' ex-wife. She took the stand reluctantly, eyes low, voice shaky. He used to come home bragging about putting people in their place. He'd call it cleaning the town, but I knew what he really meant. Dobbins shifted in his seat, visibly uncomfortable, sweat beading at his temple. Amira remained quiet through it all, never reacting, never flinching. She wasn't there to gloat, she was there to judge. Then the final piece, the footage from the courthouse itself. Everyone watched in disbelief, as deputies shaved Amira's head under court order, while Dobbins stood by smirking. The jury looked shaken, even the bailiff lowered his eyes. Dobbins' lawyer asked for a recess. Amira granted 5 minutes. When court resumed, Dobbins unexpectedly rose from his chair. Against his lawyer's protests, he asked to address the court directly. He walked slowly to the center of the room. His voice cracked as he spoke. I never thought she'd fight back, he whispered, not meeting Amira's eyes. I thought people like me, we'd always win. I thought if I made her small enough she'd just go away. A silence settled over the room. Then Amira spoke, her voice calm but firm. Justice isn't revenge, Mr. Dobbins. It's balance. What you tried to take from me, dignity, voice, freedom, this court is here to restore, not just for me, but for everyone you hurt. Dobbins looked down. He had no response, because for the first time in his life, he wasn't the one in control, and everyone in that courtroom knew it. The jury deliberated for just over 3 hours. The courtroom was silent when they returned. 12 solemn faces, no eye contact with the defendant. The judge's clerk stood, holding the verdict sheet. All rise. Judge Amira Bell nodded to the foreperson. Has the jury reached a unanimous verdict? Yes, Your Honor. The clerk read the decision aloud. On the charge of abuse of power, guilty. On the charge of falsifying official reports, guilty. On the charge of obstruction of justice, guilty. On the charge of civil rights violations, guilty. Dobbins' knees buckled slightly. His lawyer placed a hand on his arm to steady him, but the damage was already done. Amira remained composed. She had waited not for revenge, but for accountability. That day she got it. Ray Dobbins was sentenced to 5 years in state prison, the maximum under the plea terms, and was permanently barred from ever working in law enforcement again. No parole, no badge, no second chances. Outside the courthouse, the crowd erupted in applause, not because someone was going to prison, but because for once, the system had worked, fairly, openly, and truthfully. But Amira wasn't finished. In the weeks following the verdict, she announced the launch of a new initiative, the Bell Fellowship for Justice, a legal training program for young students from marginalized communities who dreamed of becoming public defenders, judges, and legal scholars. It offered scholarships, mentorship, and internships across the state. Justice can't live in a courtroom if it doesn't exist in our communities first, she said during the launch ceremony. This program is about planting seeds where people thought justice could never grow. Her own courtroom changed too. She banned outdated procedures that allowed humiliation of detainees. She pushed for transparency in local policing policies. She even opened 1 day a month for community court, where non-violent cases were resolved through mediation and restorative justice. Word spread. Soon neighboring towns asked her to train their judges. Law schools invited her to speak. National outlets ran headlines like "From Inmate to Judge, Amira Bell rewrites the rules of justice," and yet she remained grounded, never letting the gavel become a pedestal. She still visited local schools, still taught weekend legal literacy classes, still stopped to talk to the people who once watched her fall, because her greatest power wasn't in her title, it was in how she chose to use it. Amira Bell's story is more than a courtroom drama. It's more than a legal battle or a viral headline. It's a living, breathing testimony to what happens when one woman stands up, not just for herself, but for every voice silenced by fear, every dream deferred by discrimination, and every truth buried under the weight of systemic power. She was arrested for asking a question. She was humiliated for being confident, for being educated, for being black. They tried to reduce her to nothing more than a number behind a jail cell, a head shaved to strip her of identity. But what they failed to understand is something generations of marginalized people have always known. Power isn't what you wear, it isn't what they give you, it's what you refuse to surrender. In the face of injustice, Amira didn't just fight back, she transformed from a defendant to a judge, from a victim to a visionary. Her courtroom became more than a place for sentencing, it became a beacon for change, a place where justice wasn't just served, it was redefined. Let's pause here and think about what that truly means, because this story, as dramatic and inspiring as it is not just fiction, it mirrors a real painful truth in our society. Across towns like Graysonville, and even in the largest cities in the world, people are still profiled, silenced, humiliated and punished, not for what they've done, but for who they are. Every traffic stop that ends in fear, every courtroom where the outcome is already decided, every institution that protects the powerful and punishes the vulnerable, these aren't isolated incidents, they're patterns that must be broken, by awareness, by outrage, and most importantly by action. And that's where you come in. If Amira's story moved you, if it lit a fire in your spirit, or made you pause and say, this is not okay, then don't let it stop here. Like this video, it may seem like a small gesture, but it tells the platform, and the world, that stories like this matter, that voices like Amira's deserve to be amplified, not buried. Share it, send it to a friend, a coworker, someone who's been through something similar. Share it on your feed, in your group chats, in your community, because sometimes people don't change their minds with facts, they change their hearts through stories. Subscribe to this channel. We're committed to bringing you more true inspired stories that uncover injustice, celebrate resilience, and shine a light on the quiet heroes fighting battles every day, often without recognition. And if you're someone who knows that our world is better when it's more just, more fair, and more human, then this community is for you. But let's go even deeper. What can we take away from Amira Bell's journey? We learn that dignity can't be shaved away, that truth can be delayed, but not denied, and that justice isn't a thing that happens to us, it's something we must build, together. We also learn that change doesn't start in courtrooms or city halls, it starts in conversations, in discomfort, in the moment when you see something wrong, and decide you won't look away. Amira didn't run from the system, she walked right back into it, and rewrote the rules. What would it look like if more of us did the same? What if we mentored someone who didn't believe the system was built for them? What if we called out bias, even when it was awkward? What if we showed up for people who've been told their whole lives to sit down? This isn't about perfection, it's about participation. And maybe, just maybe, the next Amira Bell is watching this video right now, wondering if she has what it takes to speak up, to fight back, to rise. If that's you, let us be the first to say yes, you do, and you're not alone. This community, this channel, is about more than views and clicks. It's about building something stronger, a place where stories spark action, and where truth can't be silenced. So before we end, remember this: they shaved my head to strip my power, but they forgot my power was never in my hair. Her voice, and now yours, has the power to challenge injustice, to rewrite narratives, and to light up even the darkest places. If you've made it this far, thank you. You're exactly the kind of person this story was meant for. Now take that feeling, that energy, and do something with it. Like, share, subscribe, because stories change minds, and movements, they start with moments just like this. Until next time, stay aware, stay strong, and remember, silence protects power, but your voice, it challenges.